This is Dr. Charles Parker, and you're listening to Core Brain Journal. It's the place where I connect both fresh discoveries and interesting different perspectives from advanced mind science with the realities of real people and everyday life down on Main Street.
Well, good afternoon, folks. Thank you very much for joining us here again at Core Brain Journal. And today we have a very interesting guest, a guy who has been out on the road of life where a lot of people don't go, where they don't go into school, they send their kids to school, they cross their fingers, and yet they don't actually live in the school that Keith Kosierowski has lived in. He started a long time ago, before he was an ADHD coach, as a school counselor. And then he's done a lot of work, 20 years working with others as a school counselor, 8 years in private practice. He lectures and works with teachers on the whole idea of how do you identify these problems, what do you do about them, how can you intercede on the child's behalf in the school system. Keith has got a lot of very interesting things to share with us today. And so, Keith, without going further ado, that was a little brief introduction on this interview. What would you like to add to that that's really something that's been interesting and consuming for you as you move forward with your career?
Well, thank you for the introduction, first of all, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, one, and to your community. It's an honor. I did, just something that comes to mind is one of the big things that I've learned, or one of the things that I think is really different or that's really important with an ADHD world, is that ADHD, ADD is really feeling based. In my experience, that's a great place to start when you're working with folks, and then to build it from there. My experience is, if you can get to kind of feeling and then get into help people understand their strengths and self-awareness, that you can kind of take them in all sorts of directions, through all sorts. We know whether it's through coaching, therapy, school, consulting with schools, teaching, training, etc.
Now, Keith, when you talk about feeling, let me pin you down a little bit for our listeners on that. Are you talking about self-esteem and really sort of connecting with the individual where they feel the pressure of not really performing at their level they want to, and they have a measure of being beat up by it?
Absolutely. That, and also being aware that they could have multiple diagnoses. There could be an anxiety disorder, there could be depression, et cetera, happening. And that neurologically, the research will support often, that if a person with an ADHD style or, physiology, et cetera, is under degrees of stress or negative stress, particularly, that part of the brain that helps with the executive function, et cetera, will slow down and or start to stop working. So like a student who is being called out in the middle of class, who's not particularly outgoing and or doesn't have their homework and or just feels left behind, that stress of being of the social, being in an environment may shut them down to the point where they can't really do their work. Also, if they're anxious about a test and they're in a large group environment, the anxiety is really going to, inhibit their achievement and or ability to do well on those tests. So being aware of that as an educator, as a person, as a parent, as a professional, and just providing those accommodations often enough that'll help, alleviate that emotional aspect of it. A lot of my experiences is that a lot of folks, professionals, et cetera, they think it's more of an organizational thing, or they're not really kind of getting the whole, and a lot of folks do. However, there's a lot of folks that still need to. They see it more as a simplistic, academic sort of challenge.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that. I think it's
so
pervasive. It goes through all areas of a person's life, and to be aware of the feeling, whether that is their fingers are being, people are pointing fingers at them, in large areas, for the large parts of their life, one, and or two, to be aware that there are multiple diagnoses
Well,
that come along with it, et cetera.
When you bring that up, Keith, you're bringing up, of course, I'm totally with you on that whole point, because neurologic impairment and brain function are real. And what happens is, because the outdated diagnostic coding system for ADHD is based almost entirely upon appearances. Now, it's excellent. Appearances are helpful. Behavioral observations are helpful in making the diagnosis. But what you're saying to me, and I totally agree with you, long distance high five, they're just not adequate for the complexity of understanding the human mind. And if we're really looking at brain function, we're in a completely different kettle of fish, as opposed to, is he hyperactive or inattentive, which is kind of a psychiatric fashion show, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
So what, you had some specific neurologic training or brain training. What was it that you liked especially about that? Who did you do it with?
I've worked through the ADHD or ADD Coach Academy with David Gaverick.
Oh, yeah.
Got my coach training through there, or, I've got parts of my coach training, et cetera, through there. And then along with the research and, study otherwise, and kind of being avid into, and passionate about the topic, focusing in that area.
David's a great guy. I mean, I think what's been going on with the Coaches Association, I had the privilege of speaking down there 3 years, and I got to know a lot of the coaches there. And what I think is really going on that's extremely helpful with coaches is that they have the neurologic input. They have a sense of thinking about the biology, as opposed to just kind of dealing with platitudes and looking at, okay, here's what you do next. It's really, what do we look at? Just what you said a moment ago. How do we envision the larger picture, and what do we do about it? Could you say a couple words about coaches in general? Because I think a lot of our audience think, well, coach, what's a coach? I mean, they play football, you cock the arm back, you throw the football this way. I mean, what's really different about coaching than counseling for somebody, and what kind of different perspective do you bring to that intervention process?
I largely see coaching and is often being very strengths-based, looking more at the strengths of an individual more so than the negatives and or trying to improve negatives. Coaching is maybe a positive oriented. It's not about fixing an individual. It's about working with an individual to accomplish their goals, helping them move forward in their world. As I tell my clients pretty regularly, particularly in the beginning part, is you're perfect. That's one way of looking at it. You're perfect, and I really don't have to change you. Mm-hmm. You're here to better your world, and if I can be a part of that process, great. If I can't, great. When I'm in a therapeutic setting, ethically, I'm coming from the DSM-5 codes. I'm coming from a therapeutic or from a mental health model where somebody is technically broken, so to speak, and I'm there to fix them. So I'm there to guide them in a different way, train that, do different things with them. So I think coaching really comes from a very individualized approach where you're working with the individual more so than grouping people, you're depressed or you're ADHD, and I'm here to kind of pull you. I know how to take you from point A to point B. Also, I think largely with an ADHD coaching perspective, someone who's been particularly trained, through ADHD, and I've been, I through every opportunity, I tell David, how much I appreciate he's changed my life, and I know how much I probably can't even comprehend how much he's changed so many people's lives with his training, with who he is, etc. So treating them individuals, I lost my thought on that.
No, I got you right where you were, because I was going to say something about it. When you said it the first time, the audience may have misunderstood, because you were taking the position, and I think it's a correct one, that pathology leads to a negative conclusion, and then you've got to fix the negative instead of saying, what are the assets? How can we build on them? What have you done well? I think the same thing happens in the addiction recovering community. I mean, so, I worked in addiction medicine for a long period of time, and people would come back after being torn up in an AA meeting where it's like, you're nothing but an alcoholic, get that straight, And when you come around, they actually beat the person up to actually get them into recovery. And my point back in years ago is, if that's recovery, who wants to join it? I mean, to run around and be negative with people is not constructive at all. Whereas if you say, here's what you did well, yes, you had a relapse, remember where you were, remember how well you were doing here, what were the antecedent factors that caused you to relapse, what were the other things that were going on, instead of saying, hey, you're nothing but an alcoholic. And I think the same thing goes on in ADD land, because if you're looking only at superficial behavior, then the idea is you just got to change the behavior instead of how can you understand it, how can you grow from it, and what can you do next.
Yeah. I think the coach also does you will do a great job of developing the trust and listening to the individual. I think it's different a lot of times than other approaches, whereas, the person's really listening to the individual, not necessarily pulling them again in a certain direction. I kind of use the metaphor, teachers are wonderful, etc. A lot of some of them will still teach the textbook to the student and say, okay, well, you guys all need to learn how to do it. Learn the subject this way, whereas the coach, my experience is, goes more to the student and helps the student learn the text. It goes to the individual, and if that person gets thrown off for whatever reason, or is having a rough day, or has a different learning style, they'll adjust and go to the student.
So what you're doing there is encouraging the mind activity of the student in a growth direction, and saying, here's what you can do, as opposed to this needs correction. So the idea of pointing out the negatives and pushing hard on the negatives, and this has to be fixed and that has to be fixed. It's like, the cure for almost everything that has a personality disorder years ago, when I was a kid, is Freudian psychoanalysis. I mean, you just have to go in and get on the couch for 20 years and figure out who you are, and then it'll all work out. If you take the rake and go over your body and rake all those dead leaves off the yard, you're going to be okay, because you got a lot of dead leaves, buddy. Whereas if you go in and say, look, let's do this whole thing a different way. Now, let me ask you this question. What was it that you could share with the audience here that really changed you and redirected you from being a school counselor to really think about coaching? What happened in your life that changed your life in that regard?
Oh, boy. A couple things come to mind. One of the things, when I was in school counseling, there was a lot of administration there, a lot of paperwork, a lot of administrivia sorts of stuff, wonderful stuff. However, it was difficult for myself, and got to a point where I said, I've had enough. I kind of want to move on and do something different. Had an opportunity to be with my family and help raise my family, and took advantage of that.
Well, the administrative issue is one thing. Did you have anything that happened that said, look, I need to get more involved in a way that I can actually manage that involvement better than in the current context?
A couple things come to mind. One, I can remember in my first year or two or three of counseling, I remember a parent coming to me, and I vividly remember this, and she was like, oh, can you read these books on ADHD? Can you read at least one book on ADHD? And I remember saying, hey, I have my master's, and I have my this, and I know this, and, kind of busy, and, and just, try to be respectful. However, say, okay, I kind of feel like I know ADHD. I understand it. I understand the differences, et cetera. And I can work with your daughters and help, help them move along. Once I learned a little bit more about ADHD, I realized how, and just had an opportunity to really explore it. Whoa, the complexity of it. I really didn't know a thing about around ADHD, not even an iota, really. I just thought it was something small.
Same thing happened to me. I mean, I'm lecturing nationally for many, many years. I lectured nationally for 20 years on psychopharmacology, and I was really thinking that I was helping people and doing the right thing, and I know I was helping them somewhat, but not until I got, and I'm sure you're going to be a guy based on the fact of the way you're talking about your life, and I got into executive function to really understand the qualities of executive function challenges and how much it really amplified and really helped me understand better what was going on with brain function, as opposed to here's the symptom we're trying to fix. Where are you with the whole executive function thing? I mean, do you agree that that's a new and different way of thinking about it?
Sure. Yeah, looking at it, and then we're all individuals, and executive function is so individualized for each person. It's hard to group people into saying, oh, you have ADHD, so here are the 10 or 15 strategies, et cetera, that are going to fix that person or adjust for that person. It's really not that way. Each person has their own unique display of, so to speak, symptoms of it, and needs to be looked at and treated individually.
Yeah. So what do you do in your regards to your coaching experience? Give us a couple of examples. I know in our conversation before we really got on, you talked about the wheel that you use, and I want you to talk about that. Before you get to the wheel, though, I want to take a moment to say, what would you say would be the intervention process? You consult with people really all over the United States, or is it mainly right there in the South Boston area? What's your practice like?
I'm in private practice, and I work particularly out of my office in south of Boston area. I also have clients internationally. I run groups, electronically. I run groups, and again speak with people across several continents.
Oh, you do? How do you run the groups? What's your software that you use?
I will usually keep it pretty basic, because it's very, very difficult to have a smooth running system across the different areas. So typically I'll just do phone.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I'll use different things doing that. I'll add in there, sending in email based, pre-meeting session, materials, and then post-meeting, et cetera. I'll have follow-up meetings. I usually have a 6-week set of daily life habits or daily major part of my wheel is I have 12 different components that I work on that help people understand basic daily life habits that can really influence their create a balance in their life, like sleep, etc. And so I'll take 6 of those and work with them across a 6-week period, and in groups, and then occasionally outside one-to-one. It's been really effective. I've seen 2, 3, the clients have reported anyway that 2, 3, 400% improvement in organizational ability, skills, sleep, self-esteem, etc.
Fantastic. Now, let me ask you this, because you're writing a book about this wheel. It's the ADHD Life Balance Wheel. Is that what you call it?
Yes.
And then you're writing a book about it. Now, for those of you who are listening, you may listen to this. The nice thing about doing a recording like this, you can listen to it anytime. We're going to have a download on this that's going to be a PDF. And what has happened is Keith sent it over, and it's going to be corebrainjournal.com/004 download. And when you get that download, it'll be a PDF outline of what he's interested in, what his recommendations are, maybe a little bit about the book. I don't exactly know what the PDF is going to cover, but I think it'll be interesting. Could you say a couple more words about that book and the ADHD Life Balance Wheel that you're intending to write about?
Sure. So really, it's the way I look at it is it's really based on research for the most part. If I put in there, my professional experiences or personal experiences, I'm gonna highlight those. However, it's really based on the research, and it kind of goes through different lenses, going back through my undergrad of seeing all the, just kind of a compilation of the different factors that go into a healthy, balanced life one, and then two, the extra considerations that a person with an ADHD-like style has, and or person that has, I've used it with addictions in my addictions groups, that they've thrived off of it.
Well, Keith, how do they do it? Do they actually do each step of the 12, or do you take one and then go to another one? Do you have a system? How does all that, I mean, it's confusing just to think about it. What's the system for using the 12 points?
Well, it depends how it's used. So I'll use it in my one-to-one clients simply as an evaluative tool. So as a clinician and or coach, I'll look through my 12 sectors of the wheel and say, how is this person functioning with their sleep? And I'll ask questions about it, assess financially, how are they doing? How are they doing socially? How are they doing taking their medication or not? Or are there other diagnoses that are coming in, with the medical sector that I look at? I'll then be able to share insights as to why these things are important, and or if there's a nutrition basis, I can start to perhaps teach them about the values of zinc or magnesium and water and protein and habits such as that. So it'll be typically I'll see where the client is at and or approach them as they need. If it's in a group setting, then I'll talk for say 10 minutes on a topic, and then I'll take it to the group, and then the group will be able to share their experiences. The subsequent groups will often look at successes, look at people's individual goals. People will typically take one or two goals that they'll have across the 12 different areas. Before the end of the group, that's really what they're going to focus on, is changing one or two habits.
So they really work with the group and the group is going to help them because they kind of keep them on track. So what happens is, it sounds like in listening to you, because I've never heard about this 12-step, the 12-point, it's a 12-point wheel. I haven't heard about it before, but it sounds like what it does is it emphasizes the valuable, balanced pieces of a person's life and helps them really focus on what they do need to do to move on constructively with the next steps in their lives, as opposed to being disorganized, lost, and having it all kind of jumbled up. What do I talk about next?
Yeah, and on a daily basis. So are you getting your 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night? As far as do you have a system set up around your morning routine? Did you put your keys, phone, perhaps backpack, etc., in one location last night? It'll talk about just daily life habits. So if you follow the daily habits, then you're going to increase, most likely you're going to increase the percentage of balance that you have in your life. And it's very practical. It's not magical. It's nothing fantastic. It's, an occupational therapist said to me, I really love how it's just simple and practical. It's just, there's no mumbo jumbo or psychobabble or anything. It's really, how much water? Did you drink enough water?
You mean to tell me, Keith, you're not working with their superego, their ego, and their mechanisms of defense? Oh my gosh.
Freud and I would not necessarily agree on all of this at the moment. I'm sure I'd be able to discuss with him, but yeah, exactly.
So it sounds like it's a lot more comprehensive than just questions about what do you do, where do you go. It gives them a real focus on a variety of the things that constructively could be addressed as they move forward with their lives. And it sounds like you use it in the group, because then in the group, everybody in the group has an idea what each person's project is, as opposed to being confused about it.
And in the group, what I really enjoy is the social aspect. There's a lot of research that supports, and with different, conditions, et cetera, that the social aspect is huge. And that's really where you're going to grow from other people's experiences. I actually have, I had one client a couple years back that said, Keith, I thought it was mumbo jumbo when you first said in the meeting, I invited everybody to connect with every other person in the group. for 15-minute conversation before the end of the 6 sessions. Some people grumble, oh, I don't really want to do that. And I'm like, hey, do what you need to do. However, I invite it. I remember one of the ones that really did not want to do it. And by the end of the group, she was like, it was like a whole nother group for me to call people and have to connect with them, so to speak, and learn about their lives, learn about their experiences, what they're taking from the group, not taking from the group. And now they have relationships with people that are like-minded. The research, again, it supports you want to find people that want to see you do better and that can understand where you're coming from. If you can find those people in your world and find at least one and or others, life becomes so much better and manageable.
Well, listen, Keith, we've only got a few minutes left here, 5 more minutes. We're trying to catch drive time for the folks that are listening to this. So what would be some of the things that you would say would be kind of pithy down to what would you say a person should do regarding their next steps with coaching or not coaching? How does a person decide whether they need a coach?
Oh, that's a great question. Let's see. If they are feeling overwhelmed or frustrated in an area of their world, if they feel they're not able to live to their potential and they just don't understand why, perhaps they've gone to other professionals throughout their life. I've had people come to me after 9, 12 different therapists, psychiatrists, doctors, et cetera, gone through schools, IPs, universities that focus on, and they're not able, they still feel like they haven't gotten to the bottom of what the issue or issues are. That might be a great opportunity to go to and I really focus on an ADHD coaching person. So someone who has a real training and experiences with the ADHD, and contacting them, and often they'll give a free consultation. Give it a shot. Take a look.
I think that's good. So the next question is, what would be your best book that you think has really changed your life that you would like to recommend to people out there that's just, hey, this is the book that no matter what you do, I've got a book like that. I won't go into it on your time, but if you have a book that's like, this would be a key book for you to take it to the next level, whether it's coaching, ADD recovery, you call it. What's the book that comes to your mind right there on that one?
What's that book you wrote? Okay.
It's kind of you, but
No.
A little hint. I really wasn't searching for a compliment on my book, although it is the best book on ADHD medication out there. It's the only book on ADHD medication out there. So moving along from that, what would be the book you would say, that really kind of...
Such a toughie. It really depends. I'm just looking across the sectors. One of the most influential books I have read that really kind of spurred me along into my school counseling career was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. That was a great one. And then more recently, I've really enjoyed John Rady's Spark. Some of Hallowell's original books are fantastic.
I think John Rady, and I think those two are just very, very useful. I mean, one's very deep about where you're going with your life. And John Rady, what I really like about John Rady, who is just a mastermind, and I have been off and on with him on email about a variety of things, but he's really down to, here's how you can live it constructively. So you've got the deep book there, and you've got the practical application book, and I think those are two individuals. We'll have a link up there on the website for...
Can I share two more?
Yeah, sure, please. Go ahead.
Two more that I really, really enjoyed. Two other authors that have been so influential to me in my process. Daniel Amon, which I know is controversial with certain folks, and good, bad, right or wrong. Change Your Brain, Change Your Life.
Yep.
Is a great book. Taught me a lot about actually diagnosing people.
Totally agree. I worked with Amon for 4 years. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, I think I yes. Now that
I ran his DC office, and we had a very good long-term working relationship. But I was living in Virginia Beach, and I opened the office up in Reston. He changed my life, because I think the thing that's good about Daniel is that he takes it right down. He's one of the pioneers that said, look, we got a neurologic problem here.
Yeah.
And we've really got to look at it in a different way. We've got to look at it in a functional way instead of looking at it as some kind of surface appearances. And so who was the fourth one that you were going to talk about there?
And then Dr. Dyer, Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Taught me a philosophy, taught me about letting go, more of a very Taoist approach. I really
spiritual.
Very spiritual, very, and change your thoughts, change your life. Great book. Again,
we'll have all those linked. We'll have those linked because, it's very interesting diversity there, Keith, what you have. Because you got the Viktor Frankl, which is deep. You got the John Rady, which is here's what you need to do. Daniel Amon, hey, here's the neurologic piece. Guys, we really need to pay attention to this. And Wayne Dyer, the spiritual. It's a transformational experience of how do you deal with problems and change in life. And those are excellent references. So one thing I've done is put together a little easy way for people to get a hold of you. Do you have any closing remarks before I close with the easy way to get a hold of you, Keith? Anything else?
ADHD is emotional. It's not. The idea of feeling bad about it. I'd invite folks to really get past that. And for those of us that work with it, to look at it from the neurological perspective, at least keep that as a tool in your toolbox, and amorally look at folks, and get past just the hard work aspect of it. How about work smarter, not harder? I really value that approach. And I invite contacts. Honestly, I love it when people reach out to me regarding any questions. I'm happy to connect with anybody that as many people as I can connect with. I have those groups running, so if people are there, and I probably do $15,000 to $20,000 in scholarships for my clientele annually. So if people are struggling with money, then please absolutely feel. I never turn a person away for financial reasons. If I think I can help a person, then all my clients will attest to this. Then I'll be there, and I'll do my best to do it.
Well, it's been great fun talking to you. We covered a lot of very similar paths. I mean, it's great because I think the issues are when we start drawing back and looking at the neurologic aspects and stop, kind of doing blame and negative thinking and stigmatizing and emotionality, and really look at what are the logical ways we can approach it, it becomes much more constructive. And for those of you out there who want to get hooked up with Keith, I've taken an easy way to get to him with all his phone numbers and everything, and it's corebrainjournal.com/004 Keith, all one word. 004 Keith and Keith, and that'll take you to his links and how to get a hold of him. So, Keith, without further ado, I want to thank you for taking the time. It's been great. You have a lot of stuff on the ball that's been very helpful, and just talking about the coaching thing as general, I think is going to open doors for a lot of people who are looking for alternatives rather than thinking of themselves as sick, damaged, and broken.
Yes.
And so thank you very much, Keith, for taking the time. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate it. It's been an honor. I really enjoy it.
All right, buddy. You have a great day. Talk soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Core Brain Journal. We're working every day behind the scenes to bring you reports that connect research benches with those street trenches. Here we share the complexity of mind science because, as you know, details really do matter. One of the most pervasive, misunderstood challenges is how commonplace medications, like those written for ADHD, are used so regularly without clear guidelines. If you think you'd like more specifics, take a minute to download my 2-page PDF packed with video links and references on the absolute essentials of how to start ADHD medications. They're easily available at corebrainjournal.com/start. Thanks for listening. Do connect and stay tuned. Together we can make a difference.